Hi, Debbie. How are you?
Good. How about yourself, Chris?
I am good. Thank you. All right. This is an exciting webinar. Many people have talked to me about it. Many more people are interested in it. This open water webinar is going to be talking all about fractional roles at companies. And we couldn't have a better guest today than Debbie Rosler, who is with Burkland Associates and a fractional CFO herself. Welcome, Debbie. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Chris. It's great to be here.
So let's start off with just a brief introduction. Tell me about you. Tell me about you and your role as sort of a fractional executive.
Great. Absolutely. So, yeah, I work as a fractional CFO at a firm called Burkland Associates, and we provide outsourced finance and accounting support to venture-backed startups. We work with over 800 clients, generally between the seed up to Series C stages. And I've been working with Burkland for about 10 years now as a fractional CFO. So I have a lot of experience working in the fractional realm. When I started, fractional CFOs were out there, but not as common. And these days, it's quite common for startups, and particularly venture capital backed startups, to hire fractional CFOs.
Okay. Now on LinkedIn, I see the word fractional all over the place all the time, whether it's in a job listing looking for like a fractional CFO or CMO or something, or people listing themselves as fractional C blank, right? So what is a fractional executive? And is it just a fancy way of saying part-time?
There's a lot of similarities, but I wouldn't say it's exactly the same. So fractional executives do provide part-time support, generally working with early stage startups, small companies, and it's generally provided on a consulting basis. Often the companies that hire fractionals um, don't have a need for a full-time executive, and so it makes sense for them economically to bring someone in and pay them only for the services they need. I'd say what's different between being a fractional CFO versus part-time is that fractional CFO tends to have less hours per week than a part-time. Fractional roles are often at an even smaller level than that. And in addition to that, fractional responsibilities can flux a lot over time, week to week. So, in my role as a fractional CFO, there's some weeks that I'm working with a client that's in the middle of a venture capital fundraise, and I'll be working quite a bit. And then other weeks where there's not as much need, and I'll be pulling back. So I'd say a characterization of fractional roles is that the responsibilities tend to flux more than a part-time role that might be consistently 20 hours a week or something along those lines.
Okay, I want to get more into the structure of that in just a minute, but
Yeah.
why are we seeing so many fractional roles being offered right now and people listing themselves as fractional roles? What's happening sort of in the workplace that is giving rise to this trend?
Yeah, I think there's two sides to it. I think on the company side, companies have identified that it's really beneficial for them at an early stage to be able to bring in high caliber support on an as needed basis. So rather than having to wait until they're able to hire a full-time resource or hiring someone early and spending a lot of money, they've found that they can actually get sort of the same caliber quality of people that they need to provide that support, but just as needed at an earlier stage. So companies have started to see that benefit over time. I'd say on the employee side, the reason that a lot of people choose to want to work in the fractional space is that people realize that it's a great job to have. So people enjoy the variety of working as a fractional executive, the ability to have multiple clients at the same time and have different challenges that you're juggling, which makes the work quite interesting. And it's also a flexible job. So although there can be quite a bit of workload, you also are managing it more on your own schedule. And with the trends sort of particularly sort of COVID and past COVID trends, people have been looking for more autonomy, flexibility, in their jobs, and working as a fractional executive provides that quite a bit.
Okay, so let's dive in. Let's figure this out here. You are a fractional CEO, as you said, and you have been through Burkland. What does your typical work week look like? Now, I'm not asking for names of clients or anything like that. I don't want you to divulge anything, but just structurally speaking, what does your week look like?
Yeah. So I'd say every the typical week is atypical. So I mean, I've been doing this for 10 years now, and I can't say that any of my weeks have looked the same as any other one. So I'd say a key characterization of working as a fractional CFO is significant variety and variability in what the work looks like. I will say, sort of trying to sort of break it down into sort of averages. Sort of over my time working as a fractional CFO, on average, I've tended to balance around 5 clients at a time. So you can think of that as like roughly a day per week of work per client. But the reality is that at any given time, I might have 5 clients. 2 of them may be sort of heavier load clients, 2 or 3 of them may be lighter load. So there can actually be quite a bit of variability in terms of how much work I'm doing for each of them. And then during the week, I'm juggling between the responsibilities among those clients. So it can be, varied enough as, one client during the week, I could be, trying to help support them with a bunch of venture capital fundraise. Another client could be in the midst of hiring their first account executive, and I could be helping them to design their first incentive comp for a sales team. Another client, I could be onboarding and putting together their chart of accounts or building a financial model for them. For another client, I could be attending a board meeting and presenting financials and talking about pricing strategies. So it's all different stuff that you're having to sort of juggle at the same time. I'd say it's sort of at the core, the work requires the ability to be able to context shift between different clients, because in any given day, although you try to chunk out your work, in any given day, you can be sort of juggling between, different requests, different questions from clients. And so you need to be able to sort of pick one up and, move on to the next very, very quickly. And I think it's also, sort of one of the key things that you have to be able to do is be able to clearly manage client expectations in terms of when you're going to be able to get deliverables done, because everyone has all these things that they're asking for. Everyone wants the work done yesterday, but you need to figure out ways to work with the clients and prioritize to make sure that you're getting the truly critical things done, first, but then also balancing sort of your commitments to the clients.
Okay, so when I want to also just get into the tactical parts of this, right? So if somebody's bringing you on, are they bringing you on for a period, like is it a year that you are? What's like sort of a minimum? I'm just trying to get at, so there's a couple of things I'm trying to get at. One, which is when you are getting clients, are you looking at sort of, are you interviewing them to say, hey, what do you need me for? Like compensation or fundraising? And then do you sort of mix up what you take on based on sort of the variety of different projects? But then I'm also wondering if you are retained for like a full year, especially on like a CFO level or something monetary, it seems like, April 14th or December 31st, you could be busy for a lot of clients all at once, right? Who all have, reporting things. So there's a lot in those questions, but let's break it down a little bit first, right? So let's just say typically just in general, our fractional roles, are they for like a period of time? Like we want to bring you on, like, is it for a regular job? We're just hiring you as a fractional, or is it for a period of time?
It's generally, think of it more akin to a regular job. It's generally not project-based work. There are consultants that out there get hired to come in for some big project. They do the project and then leave. As a fractional CFO, it tends to be that we work with the company, progress with them as they grow over time, up until the point that they're ready to bring in a full-time CFO. So, a typical progression, for our clients at Burkland is that, the clients may be initially hiring us when they first get seed funded. They might hire just on the accounting side, bring in someone to help with the accounting, bookkeeping, maybe tax support as well. As they get closer to a Series A raise, that's around the time that they might think about bringing in a fractional CFO. At that early Series A stage, the needs that they have for a CFO might be a relatively light touch. And so, maybe you're, as a CFO, you're coming in and helping them raise their Series A, but then once that money is raised, the day-to-day work may be, 2, 3, 4 hours a week kind of a thing. But then as the company grows and continues to expand, their finance needs continue to grow. And so then you'll start working with those companies more and more hours over time, progressing them through their Series B, getting to their Series C range. By that point, their finance needs have grown so substantially that maybe you're working 2.5 days a week with that client. So it's progressing over time. And at that point, it starts getting to be more economic for that client to start thinking about bringing in a full-time resource. And so we as Burkland CFOs would help them to transition to a full-time internal. So the idea is that the engagement can last for a long time. I have a number of clients that I've worked with for 4 or 5 years. The time horizon of how long you can work with a client sort of depends on the progression, along their path to maturity. So a real high flying venture backed company that raises a lot of money really quickly may only have a fractional need for a short period of time. A company that takes a little longer to get through that process, which is generally more typical, might end up needing a fractional resource for 2, 3, 4 years. It depends. Company that goes sideways and doesn't, isn't able, in particular, like in the current, fundraising market where it is hard to get to that next round, hard to get your Series B raise completed, it may extend the timeline, and that you're going to continue using a fractional resource until you're able to invest more heavily in a full-time resource.
Okay, I want to pick up on something that you mentioned. You've mentioned the name Burkland, right, which is where sort of you're based out of, and that is, is it agency the right term, or what? Just like a firm?
Yeah,
like
Burkland's a professional services firm, so we provide outsourced finance, accounting, HR, tax support. And so I work as a CFO as part of the team.
Okay, so maybe talk a little bit about, that's one. It seems like you could go either like an independent route or hook up with a firm, right? So
Absolutely.
what are some things people might not know about the firms that are out there, and what that typically looks like?
In terms of working with a fractional firm?
With the firm, like, you don't need to divulge anything, proprietary from Burkland, right? But people may, as they're thinking about this, they may have only thought like, oh, I'll just hang up a shingle and say that I am a fractional CFO and then go out and try to find my own clients. Or it seems like there's an independent way of doing it, or it seems like you could join a firm and go out that way.
Yeah, and I'd say there's and when I started initially consulting a little over 10 years ago, I initially started consulting on my own. So I sort of started with my own shingle, and then I joined with Burkland. And there are pluses and minuses to working as an independent fractional consultant versus joining a firm. I would say the benefits of joining a firm is that typically the firm will be supportive or fully responsible for your business development efforts. So, that's one of the key things as an independent consultant, is that you have to bring in all the business yourself. A lot of times, people who are experts in finance, accounting, those areas are not necessarily experts in, networking and business development and bringing in clients. So there's certainly a benefit for a lot of people, whether you're a fractional CFO or other functional areas, to have sort of the clients brought to you. So that's one of the key benefits. Another key benefit is resources that a firm can offer to you. So, from my perspective, I get the benefit of, there's a team of 40 other CFOs working at Burkland. We have a Slack channel. If I ever come across a new client challenge that I haven't done before, I have a large group of people to reach out to, to help me out with different issues. I can even pull people in to help out with certain client issues as necessary. I also have an entire accounting tax team that I can pull in to also support the client. Whereas as an independent, you may not have a team of other resources to pull in like that. So that's another key benefit as well. I would say, obviously, a benefit of working as an independent is that, generally speaking, you're going to be able to capture a higher bill rate. So, from a gross bill rate standpoint, generally fractional firms will charge a higher bill rate to clients than independents do. However, if you work at a fractional firm, you have to share that gross bill rate with the firm. And so on a net basis, the hourly amount that you're going to get paid is likely going to be lower than if you were independent. Having said that, the trade-off you have to consider is that when you're working with a firm, you're more likely to be closer to, quote, fully staffed, so spending more of your time actually doing work. Whereas when you're independent, particularly initially, you're going to need to be spending a lot of time sort of bringing in business, bringing in work. And so that's going to be time that you're not making money. So on a net basis, the equation can often work out that at least in the early years, you actually financially do better working as a firm versus independently. That could flip flop over time. And or if you already have a really strong network to begin with, that day one you can sort of open up a shingle and be fully staffed. Well, it's quite likely at that point that you're going to end up making more money as an independent than with a firm. But it's trade-offs in terms of sort of the strength of your existing network, and then also sort of your capabilities and your interest in doing business development type activities, which some people just don't like to do.
Yeah. Ugh. Selling yourself. Ugh. That's no fun. That is no fun. I want to ask, when you, as someone is thinking about the agreements that they would do with a company, is it, does it get down to like the hourly rate? Are you saying you get 2 days, right? Because at that level, you're doing a lot of important work, and it's not like sort of a junior person who's, like you would necessarily count every 15 minutes or whatever. But I'm just wondering, for people who are thinking about fractional, are they thinking about setting up their agreements to be more in like, you get this number of days or hours per week, or what's sort of an industry standard?
There actually can be some variability there. So at Burkland, for the CFO work, we actually do charge for our services on an hourly basis. So sort of similar to what a law firm would do, the billable hours. When we charge at increments, not just at hour increments, but minutes at the minutes level or whatever. So we do charge it that way. There are some people that on a fractional basis choose to work more based on a day rate or a half day rate. I've seen that as well. Both are viable options. I think the thing that I like about the hourly for fractional is that, in my experience, like I was talking about at the beginning, fractional responsibilities within a given client can really, flex a lot, within a year or as the company grows. And so if you're charging a fixed day rate, the challenge you're going to have is that the reality of their needs are going to be sometimes much heavier than the day rate, and maybe other times lower. And it's like my concern working with clients is I always want to charge them only sort of for the value they've received. So I don't want to be in a situation where I'm working a lot less hours and they're still paying the fixed day rate, because that'll create frustration. And then on the other side, I don't want to be in a situation where clients raising capital, I'm working significant hours for a short period of time, but I'm not able to charge that because I have a fixed rate. So from my perspective, I always feel like the most fair approach has always been to stick with hourly rates. But I do know that in particular, a lot of independent consultants do opt for more of a day rate type of approach, which is absolutely viable, and has some benefits to clients in terms of predictability of budgeting and stuff like that. So there are pluses and minuses to both approach.
Okay. And I want to make sure people watching right now know that if they have a question, they can submit it and I will ask it. And we will, so if you have that, let me know. Then like, I want to know, what are some of the upsides and downsides of being a fractional executive?
Chris, I'm really sorry, but my internet connection just went out, so I missed your question actually.
Oh, that's okay. Oh, I can do it again. Like if it's one thing we know about webinars, is that the technology always works.
Yes.
Um, just what are some of the upsides and downsides? Like we've kind of touched on them a little bit here, but what are some things that people might not be thinking of in terms of what it means to be a fractional CFO or executive?
Yeah. So, for me personally, working as a fractional CFO has been the favorite job I've ever had across my whole career. So I really enjoy it. So to me, there's a lot of upsides. But having said that, I've seen a lot of, people try out the fractional work over time and it wasn't a fit for them. So it's definitely, there's upsides and downsides, and it's a question of what's most important to you. From the upside standpoint, so the things that I really like about working as a fractional CFO. I love the variety. So I'm someone that gets bored really easy, and I like to be challenged and be learning new things all the time. And when you're juggling 5 clients, that creates a lot of variety, both because you're seeing all the different companies, different personalities, different people you're working with, different business models. And even there's a certain amount of finance work that can be repetitive, that you're closing the books every month, you're building financial plans every year and doing forecasts on a regular basis. That can be very routine, but when you're bringing in the sort of the mix of having to juggle that across lots of clients, it keeps things really fresh and really interesting. And then it's also, you're exposed to a lot more challenges, frankly. So every company has sort of one big thing that they're working on, but if you're juggling 4 or 5 clients, you got 4 or 5 big things that you're working on. So for me, it's really interesting, it's really stimulating, and I feel like I'm constantly learning, constantly challenged, constantly you know really invigorated by my work. um I'd say that's sort of from the sort of the work content itself, what I like so much about it. On a personal level, I think the flexibility and autonomy is really great. So in the pre-COVID landscape, my situation was that, I do go and I visit clients and I go in for meetings, but I also am able to work from home a fair bit of time. These days, that's sort of standard for many people, but in the pre-COVID landscape, that was really unique and something that I really enjoyed. But the reality is that this job sort of inherently is built in a way that allows sort of more of that flexibility and autonomy, the ability to sort of have more work-life integration. Doesn't mean that you're working less. It just means that you're working a little more on your own schedule at times, which for a lot of people, particularly in the post-COVID landscape, I think has been really appealing. And then another thing that's really sort of attractive, that I found really attractive in the startup landscape is the diversification of risk. So I love working in the startup world. I think it's really dynamic. It's fun. It's really, you're working with a lot of really exciting new technologies, great people, smart people. But you are exposed to risks because a lot of startups fundamentally do fail. It's helpful to sort of know that if you're working with 4 or 5 clients, even if 1 or 2 of them were to not succeed, you still have other clients that you're working with. So over time, you're able to sort of manage that risk rather than being at a single company that doesn't succeed and then you're out of work. So that's an appealing factor as well. I would say, in terms of things that people don't like about working as a fractional, so like I mentioned, I have seen people over time sort of come in, dip their toes, and say, "Hey, this isn't for me." Some of the things that people have troubles with is that, number one, you do get to be part of the management team, but you're not as tightly tied in as if you were a full-time executive. And there's some people that have been full-time CFOs, full-time other executives through their whole career. They feel like they're part of the day-to-day team, and you don't quite get to that same level as a fractional executive because you're only working with them for a day a week. You're not part of every single day-to-day meeting. It's not quite as tied in. And so for some people, they really miss that sort of tighter camaraderie you get as being, as part of being part of a smaller team. I've also seen that other people find this whole juggle. So part of what I particularly enjoy, other people find to be particularly stressful. That need to be able to context shift and juggle between lots of different clients is not something that's for everyone, and some people have a really hard time with that. There's also, I'd say, some amount of less certainty around compensation. That's particularly the case, particularly as an independent, as you're starting up. You may not, it may take a while to build up, your client load. But in general, like, even in my current role, where sometimes I'm working a lot more than others, my compensation can vary based on that. And for some people, having that variability is not very comfortable. So that's another factor as well.
That's got it. That's a very realistic, because I think you can feel that, like, especially I'm part of the team, but I'm not part of the team. There's just sort of just a little bit of an arm's length where you're not fully there. And that I think about it like, ooh, I would really, I would like to be a part of a team. And
Yeah.
so, and that's just your mileage may vary, right? Like
Yeah,
depending on where you're at in life and what you want. So,
absolutely.
um,
And it also depends on the different engagements. So with my engagements with later stage companies, so if I'm working with a Series B company and working 2 days a week, well, I'm more tightly tied in, so I'm more likely to be closer into the team and really know a broader range. Whereas an earlier stage client where I'm maybe only working 2-3 hours a week, that's just inherently going to be a little more arm's length. So some of that can vary based on the type of engagement you choose. So.
what should people have, if people who are thinking about making the move to fractional, what should they have prepared, like before they make that move?
Yeah. I think the key thing is that you need the expertise. You need to sort of, it's not an early career type position. It's something that you do once you've been there, done that on the work. Because clients are going to want to bring someone in that is experienced in the area that they're not going to train. Like I said, like I do come across specific challenges here and there that are new, but there's not much on the broader sense that I haven't seen at this point. Working as a CFO, and people want to pay for people with expertise. And the reason I bring this up in part is that, I do get contacted fairly regularly by people who are interested in working as fractionals. And recently I've been getting contacted by early career people, even people who are just graduating, from college, saying, I want to become a fractional CFO. And I have to sort of be like, settle down. That's more of a mid or a late career type role. So I'd say sort of experience is sort of number one. I'd say number two is it's important to have a network, particularly if you're looking to um, go the independent route. So, like I mentioned, if you're going to work as part of a firm, you're going to be able to leverage the firm's network in terms of bringing you clients. But if you're looking to be an independent consultant, really the best source of getting referrals over time, of clients over time, is going to be through referrals, and that's going to be via your network. So I think it is important to have to make sure that you have a solid network and spend time building that out and fostering it. And I'd say the last thing is, getting on that point I said about the sort of variability of compensation. I think it's also important to, you can't be someone that's a paycheck to paycheck. You need to have a certain amount of a nest egg built up to go into this, so that you can weather some of the ups and downs, that you're not in a place that, having a slower week is going to be a cause for concern.
Got it. And so keying off that just a little bit, we got a question from the audience. Aaron wants to know, now you're with Burkland
Mhm.
Associates, but what are some of the other fractional agencies that are out there? And are there ones we do like for different CXOs, right? Like, is there a chief marketing officer fractional agency? And, where are some good places, well, let's start with that, right?
Yeah.
Like, what other kinds of agencies are there?
Well, I'm sure there certainly are firms that, to be honest, I don't really, that's not my space. Like, I'm not, I don't
Sure.
hire fractional CMOs. I would say that the fractional CFO space is one of the more developed areas, because, this is something that companies have been hiring over time. Sort of built, the idea of more fractional CMOs, COOs, other functional areas. That's something that I'd say, there's people that have been doing that for quite some time, but I don't think that's been quite as robustly built out until more recently. So I don't know if there's that many large firms like Burkland in the marketing space or product management space and stuff like that. To be honest, I've come across more individuals. There may be firms out there. It's just not something that I have real visibility to. And there are a handful of other CFO practices. Burkland's probably one of the largest around the country. We have about 200 employees, 800 clients. There may be one or two others getting close to our size, and then some other smaller mid-sized firms. But you just have to sort of I would suggest, if you go online, you probably can Google it, and if there are any big firms, they're probably gonna come up via a Google search, is what I would suggest.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So, all right. So outside of that, where are some good places to find fractional executive work? Should they just go on LinkedIn? Where's good places to start?
Yeah, so I'd say again, the key thing there is either A, do you want to work with a firm, or B, do you want to go it alone? If you want to work with a firm, best thing to do is to research firms, that are in your area that you can, look to work with. If you're looking to go it alone, generally speaking, like I mentioned, the best source of leads is via networking, for an executive role. So I would say, the starting point is to look within your network and find, go on LinkedIn and find people at companies that are like ones that you want to work with, and start, talking to people, letting them know that, you're hanging a shingle, and you're looking to do this type of work. At Burkland, a lot of, I'd say sort of where our client referrals are coming in from, we've been in the industry for over 15 years. So, a lot of it, we've built our brand and we've built a lot of relationships over time. But I would say the vast majority of our clients are coming in via referrals from venture capital firms, alumni or current clients. and then sort of other sort of partners in the ecosystem, in the startup ecosystem. And then we also have a large sort of marketing division that is, working to build our brand and build our name, and put content out in the world so that people know sort of about our expertise. That's the kind of stuff that's a little hard to do at the independent consultant level, but you can sort of look at some of those ideas as best practices and implement them here and there. So if you're trying to hang your shingle as an independent consultant, it's certainly a great idea to demonstrate your mastery and your knowledge by writing blog posts and sharing some knowledge with others so that people can understand. You can help them out, and then also sort of build your credibility and your ability to do that type of work. Generally speaking, as fractional executives, I don't find that sort of advertising, marketing, spamming is not typically the way that people do things. It is much more of a relationship based marketing approach. There are some marketplaces out there that have formed over time, that people can list themselves on a marketplace as a way to sort of get connected with roles. I don't really know much about that just because I've never used it, but I imagine if you again did a Google search, they would probably pop up right away. My suggestion there would be, my guess is that those marketplaces bill rates are probably not as high as as what you could get on your own, and you're also having to share your bill rate with those marketplaces. So my guess would be those might be a good place to start at the, just when you're launching, if you're launching an independent practice, as a way to initially build up some work. But I would think pretty shortly after that, you're going to want to rely more on word of mouth referrals and other ways to get business, because I think that way you won't have to be sharing your bill rate with a marketplace. So I think it's a good way to sort of get your foot in the door, but probably not the long-term approach to maintaining a lot of your client flow.
I love that you use the word share. It's like, you're so generous. I'm going to share this with you.
I mean, they are providing value, and they, the
Yes, no,
marketplace
absolutely. Yes,
yeah,
yes, absolutely, absolutely. So just to quickly, somebody from the audience wanted people to know that two firms that specialize in marketing fractional workers are Chief Outsiders, and we are Rosie, if you are a CMO. So that is that's that. And then we have one question that I think this is actually pretty interesting, which is sort of, I think, getting a little bit deeper. And Aaron wants to know if the CXO, do you like run staff meetings? Like when you have a meeting, are you running the meeting? Or do you just typically sort of report to a CEO, or are like, is it like you're a CFO at a company, but you're just only there part-time?
It can really vary depending on the engagement. So I'd say at a later stage company, you're more likely to have a actual team of people that might even be employees of the company that are reporting to you. So, in the past, I've worked with a Series C stage company, and they had, in-house FP&A and in-house controllers that worked full time, and that I worked with. And so we would have sort of staff meetings and treat it like sort of that type of a department, ownership type of a role. At a earlier stage company, so if you start working with a seed stage company, a lot of times that's a client that might only have 5-10 employees all together overall, and you are the entire finance function. For myself, it would be me, and maybe I'd have someone else from my team doing some of the accounting work, and so I would be meeting with them to sort of work on it. But in terms of my meetings with the clients, it probably is, in those earlier stage cases, it often is that my main contacts with the client would be the CEO and maybe the head of the chief revenue officer, if they happen to have one already. And so you are sort of participating in meetings, maybe leading them to an extent, but it's not the same kind of situation that you have at large companies, where you have large departments of people and there's a lot of coordination and process required, because the scrappy startups, it's a little more like everyone's off sort of meetings together and coordinating, but then off, everyone's a doer at those earlier stage startups. So
Sure.
everyone sort of coordinates, but then goes off and does their own work. Whereas when you get later stage, a lot of times there's a lot of meetings required to sort of dole off the work and make sure everyone's working on a coordinated basis. So it can vary.
Okay, before we go, one last question for you, which is, what are some of the, so someone's gone out, they've either connected with an agency, or they're going independent and use their network and they've landed some fractional roles, what are some of your best practices that you have found to succeed as a fractional exec?
Yeah, so I think the key thing is sort of is making sure, in terms of client service, making sure you stay organized. So like I mentioned, there's a lot of juggle involved in all of this. And so how do you make sure that, you have five different people competing for your time? How do you make sure that you don't drop the ball on anything, that you're delivering things in a timely manner? And so a lot of that comes down to task management. And I do find that there are some task management solutions out there like Trello or Asana that can help you sort of stay on top of how to organize your work and make sure you get it done in a timely manner. And then on the same front as that, I think it's really critical to make sure you're managing your expectations with clients so that you're setting sort of due dates and deliverables to them in a way that enables you to get work done with all of your clients, and you're setting expectations with them. So while something that they're asking you for may only take 15 minutes to do, the reality is that you may have four other things that are already in the queue that you need to do before that and aren't going to be able to turn it around immediately. And so I think there's a real critical need for you to set expectations with your clients around sort of timelines of deliverables, what they can expect, your availability.
Debbie, this has been wonderful. Debbie Rosler with as a fractional CFO and has been for a long time with Burkland Associates. Look them up if you for all your fractional CFO and accounting needs. Debbie, thank you so much for being a part of this. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris. This was a lot of fun. Appreciate it too.